Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Intro to Social Work class. Today, we have with us two guest speakers who are both from Advanced Behavioral Health. We have Matt Tritto, who's the clinical director, and Monica Manzo, who is the behavioral technician. And they are going to speak to us today about the work that they do and that maybe you might want to do, working with youth, teens and adults who are experiencing autism. So we'll go ahead and start out by hearing from Matt, the clinical director, and tell us more about this career.
Awesome. Well, first of all, thank you for having us today. We're excited to be able to share information with you and with your students about the work that we do. As you said, we provide therapy for young children, teens, and adults who have a medical diagnosis of autism. Our agency works with patients all the way from Los Angeles to San Juan Capistrano, and we provide really great therapy and really great teaching to help improve the lives of the kids that we work with. The therapy that we do focuses on skill building in communication skills and language skills, social skills, and self-help skills. And so there's this wide range of things that we teach that are really these functional and meaningful skills that really can help the kids in our program become more independent, help them become better advocates for themselves, build relationships, and engage in safer behavior. So we're just really excited to be able to share information about what we do and maybe entice people to consider this as a career choice.
Okay, that sounds great. Sounds interesting. I know that many of our students are interested in working with youth, and as human services generalists, they really need that hands-on experience working with people and figuring out ways to do different interventions. But I think it would be really important also for our students to understand what exactly is autism, and maybe even a little bit about what are the types of interventions and treatments that you provide to your clients.
Sure. So yeah, I think that the awareness about autism is growing. I think that most people have heard about autism, maybe seen some information, some statistics on billboards. They probably might even know someone that's a friend or a family member who's received a diagnosis of autism. And so, things like this, the community connections are really valuable because the more awareness that we share about autism, the more we as a society and as a community are educated, which is awesome. And so what is autism? It's a neurological disorder. It's lifelong. We unfortunately do not know what causes autism, and we don't have a cure for autism. There's different theories about what might cause it, but there's nothing that's been proven in any of the research. So it's really this sort of cluster of skill deficits that helps us identify when a child is not developing in the same way as their neurotypical peers. And usually you start seeing signs of it when the child's got those early milestones around the age of 2.5 to 3 years old. Although because of this awareness that we have and because of improved assessment tools, you can actually identify very young children with autism as early as 16 months. And so, what is autism? How does it affect the individual? Well, most of the kids in our program have significant language delays in their speech and also in their understanding of language. It often can impact their social behavior. Socializing with others can be very challenging, can sometimes be very aversive. And also, a lot of the kids in our program, they learn in unique ways. They require really creative and repetitious teaching for them to develop these really important skills. And so the therapy that we do is called applied behavior analysis therapy. It's been researched since about 1950. And it's now considered to be the primary therapy for individuals with autism. All 50 states require insurance to cover ABA therapy because it's been deemed medically necessary for individuals with a medical diagnosis of autism. And it's highly effective in developing really critical skills.
Okay, great. Thank you for that description. I think you're right. A lot of people have heard about it, and yet at the same time, the awareness and is always so beneficial for everybody, even those who don't necessarily end up working with children or youth who are having autistic symptoms, shall we say.
That's right.
So we have Monica on the line with us today, and Monica is actually doing this work. She's going out to homes and she's providing these methods that you're talking about, this treatment, and she's been doing that for about 3 years. I'm wondering if you could talk to our students a little bit about, I don't know, just kind of what are some of the things you do in a typical day, and what made you decide to get into this line of work?
Yeah, definitely. So hello, my name is Monica, and I have been working, as you mentioned, for closer to 3 years now. And so when I first started with advanced behavioral health, I was an undergrad, like many students watching this might be. And so going right off the bat, I knew I wanted to do something that would be community-based and that would help provide, just give back in some sort of aspect, although I didn't exactly know what that was. So a little background, my undergrad degree is in speech pathology. And so initially, right off the bat, I did plan on just setting out my options before moving forward. However, during my undergrad experience, I did take a lot of internships and volunteer opportunities, both in the speech field and in ABA. And so I was exposed to a lot of what speech, OT, PT, and ABA is. But it wasn't until I took my first paid internship, shall we say, with ABH, and that's when I realized, working with individuals who had autism, this is what I wanted to do. So basically what I do on a daily basis just consists of providing behavioral support for individuals who do have autism. And I typically work with children who are aged between 2 to 14 years of age. And so in my previous experience, that is the clients that I have worked with. So I have seen settings such as the home settings, school settings, clinical settings. And I can definitely say that each setting is different. Like Matt mentioned briefly, we do work a lot in the clients' homes. And so that's very different when compared to other jobs, because we do create sort of a bond, a chemistry with the family, because realistically speaking, the family is the team that we need, because they are the ones that are with the clients most of the time. And so we need them and their help to help implement these behavioral interventions on a daily basis when we're not there. And so I think without the family seeing our dynamic and our work ethic, it would be a little hard to explain just verbally how this looks like. So the fact that we do have the opportunity to sometimes work in a client's home is pretty much a benefit to everyone, just so that they can see how we work and they can put in the effort and just start approaching any interventions that they may seem deemable when we're not there.
Yeah, you really bring out some key points and some important topics, I would say, that our human services students could relate to. One is that you're going into the home, you're seeing the family, and although your caseload is always going to be related to autism, I'm sure that the families themselves and the environments that you go to and what it looks like when you're inside the house and how the family operates is a lot of diversity.
Yes, definitely. So I think to highlight a bit on what it is going into this field, definitely, educational courses do prepare you to more or less have a general understanding of how to approach from a textbook context, what this means, what this concept is, and how to approach it. But I think the hands-on experience is really what guides you to be the behavior technician that you eventually grow to be if you choose to follow ABA field. So I am a registered behavior technician, so meaning I took just additional steps in order to be certified. And I would say in the process of doing so, I did become more aware of all these criteria that were needed in order to become a proficient BT, just because you need to be culturally competent, you need to be not only textbook smart, but also just overall environmental smart. And so what I mean by this is the clients that you may be working with can engage in different behaviors in the family setting. You know, they're around mom, dad, siblings, so they may be a little bit more prone to exhibiting certain behaviors that we may not see in a school setting. And I have had the privilege to work in a variety of settings, so I can confidently say that I have clients that I currently work with in a school setting and a home setting, so we alternate. And just seeing how exposing this client to be more socially involved, that it's a key component to kind of exposing them to these different settings and environments, because specifically targeting a certain behavior under one circumstance may not be the same behavior or tolerance and rate that you see in a different setting. So I definitely think the home setting it's an eye-opening feeling, really.
The reason I'm nodding and acting like I know what you're talking about is because I did also offer counseling in a home setting, different agency and in different circumstances, but I definitely know what you mean. And I do think that it's just such a better learning environment than, like you said, than just a textbook or a classroom or even an agency, because you just get a really big picture of culture. Every family has a culture, and how people live inside their homes is so instructive. It really opens your eyes and opens your minds to just people in general, families in general, and life in Southern California, I guess, and the various ways people experience that. You had mentioned a couple of terms that I'd like to elaborate on. ABA, RBT. I know that there's some training involved in what you do, and I know there are certain methods that you use. I'd like to find out from one or both of you, how much of that training is provided by your company, and how much of that training then do the students get possibly in another setting, and what would that training look like? What would be some of the things you would learn?
Sure, I can take that one. So, one of the things about our agency is that when we're hiring people, we really want to hire people of character, people who are hardworking, who are creative and dynamic, and also who have it in them to sort of work in a sort of service-oriented career. That's what drew me into the field, is that I knew I wanted to teach, but I really found this particular type of teaching to be the most exciting because it required the most creative thinking on my part. And so we really, we take people that are at all different levels, all different starting points, because we figure that we can teach anyone who wants to learn how to do this. They can be effective. All they really need to do is come in with the right attitude, which is, I'm here, and the best way for me to be an effective teacher or a therapist is to really engage with my client, to really understand this child in front of me, understand how they operate, what they like, what they don't like. And what we do as a program is we tailor all of the things that we teach these kids based on their specific individual needs. So you might meet one kid in our program who's working on a whole range of really important skills. And you might meet another kid and he's working on a whole different range of skills. So there's nothing that's cookie cutter about it. So when you come in for training, if you're brand new to the field, brand new to our agency, you go through a week-long training where we're just doing lots of training on the concepts and then the actual application, practicing how to do the therapy itself, because it's very hands-on. It's not like talk therapy where you're sitting with a child and trying to get them to talk to you. You're actually practicing these skills that are so important. So for example, one of the skills we teach is communication, right? Mm-hmm. Many of our kids are nonverbal, or they're just starting to develop language. So what we'll do is we'll contrive opportunities for them to practice their communication skills. We'll put something that they really like in sight, but out of reach. And as soon as they start to reach for it, we'll start prompting them to use their words. So it's a very hands-on therapeutic process that requires lots of practice of these skills. And so that's what we do during the training. And then once you get through your training and you've met all of your competencies, then you're assigned to a team, and you have a clinical supervisor who's a behavior specialist, and they are overseeing that team, and they are the supervisor of the behavior technician. So you always have someone who has years and years of experience that was once a behavior technician, who is your go-to person for all of your needs for clinical support. And their job is to mentor you and guide you. So a lot of the training also continues afterwards, because you can learn how to do the therapy, but now you need to learn this individual patient that you're assigned to. And that's where your supervisor provides this ongoing support over time.
That is very encouraging to hear. I love to hear that as a professor. I want you as a student who's watching this video to really pay attention to that when you're going out to work in the field, you want to be sure that the people that you're working for have your back, and that they're going to help you out. You're not just thrown out there into some scenario and kind of expected to figure it out. So that's very encouraging. I know also that because your work is, let's say, home visits, I imagine that the schedule is pretty flexible to some degree and possibly changing on a day-to-day basis. Could you talk a little bit about what the schedule is like?
Yeah, so when we have people that are applying for the company, one of the first things that we want to know if we really think that they're serious about joining our team is just, what is their life like, and how many hours do they think they can commit to? And we have people that are coming from different situations. Some of them are full-time students, some of them are not in school at all. And so their availability will determine how many hours they can do in a week. So we have many people who work full-time. We have some people who work part-time, and we have so many different patients, and we have an enormous waiting list right now, especially where we have some families who, might receive 10 hours of therapy in the afternoon after the child comes home from school, 10 hours of therapy per week. And we might find that there's a new employee who is a student who can only work in that same time. So we try and match the availability of our families with the availability of our staff. So there's a tremendous amount of flexibility. Typically, the work hours are Monday through Friday, somewhere between 8 and 6:30. We also do have some families that have therapy on the weekends. And if we have staff who want to work on the weekends, we can accommodate that. So we really try and work with the needs of both our families and the availability of our team.
Okay, great.
Quickly add to that. I can speak on the flexibility of the clinic, definitely, just because as I mentioned, I was a student when I first started, and I was a full-time student. So from previous job experiences, that is something that is always in the back of a student's mind. Will they be understanding of my school hours or my sudden change in exam dates, things like that? And so going into the clinic, I started full-time student, part-time employee. And then as soon as I realized, well, I can handle a bit more hours, you can easily inquire and reach out to the office and let them know, hey, I have an opening this day. If there's more hours, great. And they are very willing and more than happy to help any student and any employee work around that time and availability. So that is one of the perks, I would say, because you rarely find that in a job that is willing to cooperate there.
Very important. And it seems like then I would have to assume that you would need a car for this job. And let's say I don't know, maybe tell me, Monica, maybe about your week or a typical week for you. What are some of the different locations that you go to? Are you staying pretty much in the same area, or do you have a wide range of areas that you visit?
Yeah. So I do have a couple of areas, but right off the bat, I'd like to point out that if you have the opportunity to select whether you want to stay local or if you don't mind any additional drive time, you can also do that. With regard to advanced behavioral health, which you may hear me refer to as ABH, mileage is compensated for, so that may be something that you would like to hear and consider. But so I used to go to Cal State Long Beach for my undergrad, so when I first started, I definitely did local to my home, as well as areas such as Downey, Long Beach, Norwalk. So relatively still within the same area that I was located in, whether I was at home or at school, I could get to my next session in a matter of 15-20 minutes. It's not like we're driving hours away for
Oh, that's kind of good to hear in a way. I did, like I told you, I used to do home visits, and there were times where I went from, let's say, Long Beach to Whittier or to East LA, like in the same day.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, that's, just something good to know, I suppose. And good to know that you cover mileage. Staying, I guess, within the range of confidentiality and whatnot, is there any way that you could possibly tell us a little bit about, like, what does it look like? You go inside the house and you meet with someone, and how old are they? And what do you do when you get there? And maybe what are some of your, I guess, most rewarding days, and maybe one of your most challenging days, some of the range of things that you experience when you do this?
Yeah. So when I first started, you meet your client, and no matter how many hours of training you may have, working at the office, it's always new and refreshing to meet a new client, just because, like Matt said, every client is different, and you have to individualize your approach depending on how this client is, how old they are. So I did have a client that was about 4 years old when I first started with her, and she was mainly nonverbal. So it can be a little daunting at first, just because you have so many ideas and interventions that you want to get through in a matter of the first session or the first week, but you realize that you really have to take it at the pace of the client.
Mhm.
So more than not, I found myself just making sure that I had the right motivator, the right reinforcement. So looking around the house or asking the parents, that's the luxury of working in a home setting. You can ask the parents, oh, what do they like? Whether it be toys, a little snack, anything that can motivate them to complete the demand present. And so yeah, usually I start by establishing what the reinforcer will be like for that particular moment, because I do alternate throughout the session. And then just starting from least to most prompting, meaning I will, for example, ask the client, what is this? If I have Cheerios in my hand and they're working for Cheerios, what is this? And if they can't tell me verbally what it is, I can provide them with a partial verbal plot, cheery, and then have them finish it. If that's not the case, I can do errorless learning. So I just, what is this? Cheerios. And I simply give them the term, and we repeat a few while providing a reinforcement for any approximation. Anytime they make any effort to respond or even provide joint attention to the same item that we're working towards. So I think that's the benefit, I would say, of ABA, that you may be targeting one goal, but inadvertently you're really working on so many others. You may be working on the child's visual performance or their mending competencies, and so you just target so many little areas, and before you know it, you have made so much progress that when you revisit this goal, you can simply just present the item and the child will be mending, I want Cheerios. That's how it is now with the client that I mentioned. She was nonverbal initially. It's been about a year, and she mans now 4 to 5 word sentences independently without the need of any of my prompting, which is refreshing. Yeah.
Right. So it's nice. You get to see progress. You get to see sort of the fruits of your labor, I guess, or it's a rewarding to see that you've accomplished something.
Although sometimes you don't really notice that progress until you take a step back. And I think that's where the supervisors come in and their feedback, because really you're working with this client, you're seeing them most of the days of the week. So as someone who is kind of just there constantly, hearing the supervisor say, wow, compared to certain day, like they will give you a specific day, compared to the start of January 2020, this child was not speaking anything. And if we compare the data to now, look, they're speaking in an 80% independency rate. And you're really left in awe because you're saying, wow, that's amazing to hear. And the feedback from the parents, I would say, is very motivating, because you always hear a lot of gratifying responses. They're saying very appreciative, thank you for your work. Everything you do is very long term, and it has an impact in how we progress everyday lifestyle activities. So it's rewarding.
I've been in the field for about 20 years, and I still remember this one session I had when I was a behavior technician. I was probably about a year and a half into my career. And I remember I was teaching this little boy, very young, he didn't speak. And he was just starting to identify pictures when we would ask him to identify, where's the apple or where's the car? And he would start to be able to point to those. So he understood what we were saying, even though he couldn't talk back to us. And at the same time, he started to be able to vocally imitate sounds that we would make with our mouths. And one of the sounds he started to be able to imitate was dada. And I remember we taught him, we showed him a bunch of pictures of people, and one of them was his dad. And we taught him that this picture is called dada. And I remember the day that his dad was in the room with us while we were working. And I turned and I pointed to his dad and I said, "Who's that?" And the little boy looked at his dad. It was the first time he'd ever said it. He turned and he looked at his dad and he said, "Dada." Oh. And I remember it was one of those, for me, it was one of those moments where I was completely blown away by how effective that moment was. Just the fact that you could see a skill that was not there suddenly emerge. And for that dad, it was probably one of those most meaningful moments that he had in a very long time. These are parents who are under a lot of strain, a lot of stress. Right. They have awesome people like Monica that work with these families, want to be there with these kids. And these kids are just really so wonderful to work with, that it really is a very rewarding job. It's not easy work, but it's the kind of work that when you do see the progress that comes from it, you realize there's a lot going on there that makes you really feel excited and motivated to come back and do it again.
Yes. And from my perspective, I would imagine that from the time you started doing the work until now, you have grown as a human being and as a worker and as a service person, because of the just being in those environments. You're learning. And I would imagine at times growing some of your skill set, your patience, your tolerance, your flexibility, your understanding of the process, which I think those are the kinds of skills that a human services professional just needs, no matter what career they end up in, that those are such valuable skills that you hope a human services professional would have and hold on to. Because, occasionally it can get to, depending on the situation or the scenario, not every human services professional keeps that flexibility, and then it kind of turns into a not so helpful person.
Well, I think that when I think about what we do, we're like professional problem solvers. We have a situation with a young child and everyone's saying, why doesn't she do this? Why does she do that instead? And, our job is to try and understand the reasons behind the behaviors that we see, and then to try and figure out how do we teach them these really functional skills that can replace those ones that are less functional. And so just the way that we go about doing that work, the way we approach problems is very systematic. And I think that anyone that wants to become a teacher or a school psychologist or a counselor, any of those kinds of fields, doing this kind of work is a fantastic way to get exposed to learning the principles of behavior, of human behavior, because you can apply that to a number of different fields. And for me, I decided I wanted to stay in this field. I went back to grad school and I sat for my boards exam and all that sort of stuff. But I have a lot of friends who were behavior interventionists and then went on to becoming high school teachers, but they'll say, the reason I know how to teach is because of what I experienced teaching kids who learned in unique ways and applying those same principles to their new audience, right? And high school kids. So
I
it's
can
really,
see.
it's the kind of field where you continue to learn as you go, which is really awesome.
Yeah, I can definitely see how that would be the case. And what I have learned is if you make your videos too long, no matter how great the topic is, people start losing interest.
Right.
So with that being said, I am getting ready to wrap this video up. But before I do want to know a little bit about registered behavioral technician, RBT. I've heard that term before. I just want to know what's entailed in that, or what are the benefits of getting that. And I guess if you could kind of wrap that up into, I don't know, maybe how, Monica, how your career or your possibilities have transformed over the 3-year period that you've been there. So you were a beginner, now you're a RBT, it's been 3 years, some things have happened, just anything along those lines that a student might want to hear.
Yeah, so I started as just a BT, a behavior therapist, and I eventually, like I mentioned, I decided this is the field where I want to stay. So I wanted to get an official license, which is what the registered behavior technician is. You take an exam and you get a license that says, hey, you passed. And so with that, there are perks. You get well, regarding advanced behavioral health, of course, you get a pay increase, you get just more flexibility and cases onto your schedule, which essentially prepares you into a more learning experience. So obviously, like you mentioned, Professor, you're learning every day. And so no matter how much training you have, you still learn constantly. So this, once you have a RBT license, then you can be a more understanding of how the goals of this client are formed, because I realized once I got the position of an RBT, I had more communication with the supervisor and I was able to give input on what I thought worked, what I thought did not work. And so it's more of an intimate participation with the client and the supervisors themselves, because every client may have a different supervisor. So you interact with a handful of supervisors. But the way that has shifted my perspective and overall educational goals, I definitely liked with how accommodating ABH was with my educational goals and my desire to advance in the company. So I would say about 3 months after I got my RBT license, I spoke to them about my desire to pursue my master's in ABA. And immediately they were very helpful with asking if I needed a flexibility change or schedule, anything like that. And so they definitely do sign off on your clinical hours, because once you decide to pursue a master's degree in ABA, you need, depending on your program, between 1,500 to 2,000 clinical hours. And so ABH signs off on them while you simultaneously work. So, you know, you're learning, but you're also still checking off on these hours. And typically the way it works is by the time you finish your program, you're done with your hours so you can sit for the board exam. And I realized something I did not think was too attainable was being a full-time master's student and working full-time. I'm doing both. I'm still a full-time employee and I'm a full-time student, and it does not feel overwhelming, especially with how much support ABH offers with just reinforcing our mental health, just to prevent us from being burnt out. And so
Good.
yeah, we have supervisors and office management that just reaches out. We do like a check-ins, we do just typical conversation how we are doing here now, and just reiterating that, you know, we are working with kids, and so it may go unnoticed that our emotional, mental, and even physical well-being kind of interjects into our clients' performance also, because if you're working with kids, especially, they pick up on your demeanor, and if you're not feeling it, they're not feeling it. So I think that's great that ABH checks on us also while checking in on the clients and making sure everybody is accommodated to.
Yes. Yet another key point, you know, that you're making there, that taking care of your employees. I know that not everybody who watches this video is going to come work for you or any of those kinds of things, but bringing up those points to our students, I like to hear that, because I do want our students to know that there are agencies out there who care about their employees, who offer training, and there are some who don't. And it's okay, you know, look around for those good employment opportunities where you're going to be taken care of and you have some potential and some training, very, very important. So, and it's about time for us to wrap this video up, but are there any closing statements, anything that you might want to add before we?
Well, again, I just want to say thank you for giving us the opportunity to share what we do with you guys. And thank you for listening to all the students who are listening. You know, when we think about our agency, we're really a team. It's nice, especially in the world being the way it is right now, to work for a place where you feel like the people that you work with are good people, they have good intentions, and to have, you know, meaningful outcomes in your day. You know, at the end of the day, to go, what did I do today? Well, I taught these really important skills to these kids, and it's going to have a meaningful impact for them and their families. And that's how I earn my paycheck. And to do that, knowing you work with a company that's supportive, that promotes from within, gives lots of opportunities for growth, it's really a great place. So even if you don't work for us, we hope that whatever you guys do with your careers, that you feel rewarded with it, and that you feel like you always have opportunities to grow. And if you're interested in learning more about what we do at Advanced Behavioral Health, we'd love to hear from you, because there's a growing need for people who want to work in this field, like Monica and like myself. And we'd love to talk to you guys about what we do.
Okay. And of course, when I post this video, I'll be posting ways to get in touch with you. And
awesome.
Yeah, I would just like to say, no matter what field you're going into, I think experiencing what it is working with individuals with autism is such a rewarding experience. And you can obviously, there's just no way of going wrong with attaining this experience, because it looks good on your resume. You can branch out into other areas, and you don't have to stay in ABA, but it just teaches you fundamental ways of approaching behavior that maybe you wouldn't have elsewhere learned. And so just know that whatever you choose to major in, experiencing ABA can definitely, you can be reassured that you're making an impact in your community, and you see that benefit and how you are impacting individualized people. And yeah, it's very rewarding to see that you're actually doing something productive.
yes, and I'd like to also just bring back around that experience of being inside families' homes, seeing different cultures, different ways that people operate inside their house is also such a valuable learning experience. I think sometimes one of the things that I see that beginning human services students can do that's not very helpful is they generalize. And they sometimes tend to think that everybody's family is like their family, or everybody, that they just have kind of a narrow perspective on the world at large. And the more people that you can interact with and the more locations that you can interact with, I think that really helps your ability to work with people.
Absolutely.
So on that note, I am going to end today's recording, but thank you once again for coming and speaking to our students, and hopefully you'll be seeing some of our students in the near future.
Wonderful. Thank you again so much. And
All
best
right.
of luck to everybody.
Okay. Bye-bye.